Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Loreweek. I am Headache Lore. I've actually talked about this before. I suffer from headaches, which means I have regular headache issues. And it's actually not very common. Every now and again, probably usually about once a month. I think it's weather related. I'm not actually sure. I wake up with a headache. God, I hate waking up with it. It's what wakes me up. I got up early today by my standards because the headache woke me up and I couldn't rest anymore. So if I'm a little bit in terms of my tone or my energy levels today, it's because I have a freaking headache. So you'll notice we don't really have a topic thing up there. I suppose I could go ahead and put it up there. Let's go ahead and put it up here. So current topic. Whoops. Next topic. Awesome. Glad. I hope you enjoy studying our baked goods here. I'm actually really a big fan of baked goods myself because thanks to my throat issues, I can't really have most forms of sweets, but I can have pastries. I know, that's got to be the most first world problem ever, right? I have a huge sweet tooth, and I also suffer depressive issues if I don't have access to food in general. So, anyways, so one of the things I mentioned last week was how there's like no news, right? Now, to talk about this a little bit in brief here, this is just true. This has always been true. There's this situation where, like, the amount of news that exists kind of does... And then, like, you know, a major event happens, or there's a release or something, and then the amount of news dips. And it's really frustrating for someone like me, because I don't want to talk about fake news, and I don't want to do clickbait, like every other site in the world does. It's their job to keep making news happen. They have to keep doing that. So they're like, hey, you know, let's talk about this other random thing that's not news. So I literally have only one thing I consider newsworthy this week. So I decided to ask my viewers across the week if they thought there was anything newsworthy to talk about. Facebook is still evil. That's it. That's all I've got. Okay, so now that we've done that, welcome back, Scenes. Look, I'm just saying, if you hadn't betrayed me and failed me in the Yakuza, we have a finger regrowth formula. You could have just asked, dude. I do have a couple things to discuss, such as it is, but I guess we'll get to that in a minute. What about that YouTube? Well, there's YouTube. I do want to mention a couple things. So I'm putting together a new webpage. It's not done yet, but I wanted to know what you guys thought of it. If you go to lorerunner.com/premieres, you will find a webpage that I'm working on. I'm curious of your guys' feedback. What do you think? I decided not to talk about the unionizing thing because I have nothing to say about that. Guys, game developers are thinking about unionizing. And unions can be a good thing. Unions are also usually a very horrible thing. Who knows where that'll go? And I sure as hell ain't talking about Korea. I ain't touching that with a 10-foot pole. Or 10-mile pole. Hey, Brennian. So anyways, it's a list of my premiere ratings. For those of you not aware, ever since I started actually enumerating the pluses and minuses, excuse me, with regards to my premiere runs, I have been keeping track of that. You know, I have a full list. Now, it's just in a literal Google document. But I figured I might have a better and easier to track way for people to go either check that or look at that. And I thought, you know what? Why don't I go ahead and have like a little thing saying, hey, this is what, you know, this is my in-brief thoughts on the game, spoiler free, and then there's a spoiler tag. And then you can go down and see, hey, here's my actual pluses and minuses. So, That's the purpose of that page. It's effectively replacing the now defunct Wednesday Reviews on the Run, which was never quite a functional feature, and well, it got destroyed for a reason. Premieres, yes. Hang on. If you give me a second, I'll just pull up a thing. Yeah, I heard about the Paragon thing, and I heard that Battlefront 2 has decided to capitulate. Color me shocked. I'm sorry, I just don't see anything newsworthy. That's why I'm just like, and, you know. No, there's not a link to there from my main page because I haven't finished it yet. I'm still working on this. But here's the temp look. The idea is pretty much to have the format as is. I'm taking feedback. If anyone has feedback, I don't need praise. I don't need hatred. I need feedback. So as you can see there, we've got logo of game, quick blurb with the spoiler-free review, and then you can click the pluses and minuses thing, which will then showcase all of the individual pluses and minuses of the particular game. Have I played Into the Breach? Really? I streamed that. That video has already gone live, even. The 10 light year poll? Probably not. Good, Berenian. Because I'm still haven't figured that out on the other page. I don't know, Khalid. So that's one thing I'm working on. I'm also still technically taking suggestions for emotes for Twitch. You'll notice we actually have new bit emotes, too. You can see one right there. There's a Link one, and there's some Kefka ones. Those are now bit things we have on the show. I've already set up a few emotes, although I don't believe they've been confirmed yet, so you shouldn't actually be able to use them yet. But we already have, the two we have now is the Lore Man, because everyone requested that, and Fear. Excuse me, Fear. Let's say that correctly. Let me double check really quick. Not Evil is already being put forward. Even though it's already technically an emote, it's very commonly used. So yeah, it looks like they haven't been shown yet. There's one, the glasses. There's Chasm. There's the coin for when we should just flip a coin. And there's going to be a save emote for reminding me to save in games. That's all we've got right now. Any other suggestions of things you might use on a regular basis? I don't have an infinite amount, but I am still taking suggestions in general. Let's see. What else was I going to talk about? Oh, yeah! Do they have audio? Does what have audio? Because those vary based on how long you've been a subscriber, seemed. I mean... I'm not 100% sure what I would do, like how I would do those. It would just be a guy from FF6 at that point. B, how often would it be used? Okay, I think I can talk again. Fair enough, Dakota. Not very often. Take a that's true. We could have a take a drink emote. That's a good suggestion. I'll find a picture of a Canada Dry. Try to get it in there. I'll jot a note about that. Canada Dry emote. If you just listed the names of the premieres without anything else, and when you click on it, it opens it. I don't actually agree with that, Hazardous. Now, I want to explain why. I don't want to just say you're stupid or anything like that, because that's not my style. The point of having the... I could do a double stack thing, but I'm trying to avoid that because that is a nightmare to code. Accordions are just an absolute hassle. Premieres. See, what I want is I want something where you can just look there and see the spoiler-free review. You know, just a quick, very quick paragraph of this is exactly what I think of this thing. Just bam. And then if you want the full in-depth thing, then you click the whole thing. And also I show the net score in the spoiler-free section, because that's just a general score. Because everyone likes the 3 out of 5. Well, here's my 3 out of 5, +2 and +5. Or -4, -1 for the 2 I've shown. I suppose I could do a second thing. I suppose I could do a second accordion thing. It's just, I really don't want to. I'll think about it, Hazardous. I'll think about it. Because the intention is for this page to get very, very large. I've already got quite a few premiere runs, so this is that's gonna be an absolute nightmare to code. But I'll think about it. What I might do, actually, it occurs to me, what I might do instead of that is have a table of contents thing at the top. Where it's like, click here, scroll down to Secret of Mana, click here, scroll down to this game, you know, that kind of a thing. It's just CSS, Eisermaster. It's a website. So could someone tell Sacred King the fear emote that's already in? No, I am not insane, I am crazy. There is a difference. Yeah, I like that idea. Let's go and do, that's a good idea, the table of contents thing. Thank you, Sonoshi. What else do I want to talk? I want to talk about Loreweek Theater really quick. So, let's go ahead and... So, I'm doing this thing. We are doing this thing called Loreweek Theater. And I'm just plugging it, basically. I just want people to be aware that that's a thing we're working on. We are relatively close to being done with Chapter 1 right now. Still working on Chapter 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. All of those are ones that I'm actively working on right now. And we'll be working on future stuff in the future. At the moment, we've already done Paper Mario 2 as our initial Loreweek Theater, which was kind of a proof of concept. And we are in the process of going through all of Final Fantasy IX. After that, we plan on working on Undertale, and then after that, not 100% sure. That's quite a ways off, and it's very difficult for me to find time to work on that. I've been trying to work on it basically in the cracks in my time right now. But I want to remind everyone that we are still working on that, and hopefully encourage those of you who are still recording lines for it to record lines for it. I have been actively putting that in and getting that edited and all that fun stuff. It's been good stuff. I'm actually really liking how it's turning out so far. I'm very happy with our Steiner. I'm very happy with our Garnet. I am extremely happy with our Braun. I just wish we could get the retake. So everything's been good. I just want to kind of plug that really quick. God, I have such a headache. This is strange. So I suppose we'll go ahead and just move on to my first topic, since we've just kind of been blathering for a bit here. Oh yeah, we're also going to be working on the FAQ this week. I'll be working on the FAQ this week. It'll be a video, and it will be going up on the website, and it will be a frequently asked questions section. Thank you everyone who has suggested questions to be asked. If anybody has any final suggestions, today is basically your last time to do so. Okay, so what's the timestamp? 13. This is the wrong music for this topic. Let's talk about Tencent. How many of you know what Tencent is before I start talking about it? Anybody? Gosh darn, it always does that. Riot Games is accurate. Partially. Kind of. Tencent is actually probably the biggest gaming company in terms of just money and no other metric in the world right now. Now that is a debatable figure, but the fact that it's in consideration kind of says all I really need to say about that. Hang on, I need Doom music for this. Give me just a second. Hang on. Do I have Doom music here? No, I don't. Hang on. I have Doom music on another player. Give me just a second. They're Chinese. Tencent is a Chinese company, and they own a whole lot. What about music theory? Yeah, I don't know crap about music theory. I just write songs. Where's Doom? Where's my Doom playlist? Here we go. No. I need more Doomy than that. So yeah, Tencent is not new. That's the first and most important thing to mention. Tencent... no, actually, they didn't Master. They failed at doing... Or no, they kind of... I'm sorry, I'm thinking that wrong direction. I was thinking of Vivendi, which is actually... God, I hate Vivendi. Hang on. Let's have, like, really, really terrifying music. There we go. Okay. I don't know who Vangelis is, or what Vangelis is. Tencent is a Chinese company that owns large chunks of other companies. I jotted down some really quick figures. So you guys all mentioned League of Legends. And yes, they do actually own a controlling interest in Riot Games. They also own a controlling interest in Epic Games, who you may or may not have heard of. Epic Games has this really, like, random indie game no one's ever heard of called Fortnite, which is out right now, and the Unreal Engine. Also, they own a corporation you've probably never heard of called the PUBG Corporation. Yes, really. They own both sides of that equation. And this is my favorite one. They own a group called Supercell. Now, I imagine most of you have never actually heard of Supercell, but if I say the phrase Clash of Clans or the phrase Clash Royale, you've probably heard of them. Now, just to give you an idea of what I mean by a controlling interest, because this varies from place to place. Like, for example, they have something like 7%, I didn't write down the exact number, of Ubisoft. They have closer to 53% of Epic Games and PUBG. You know how much of Supercell they own? 84.3%. If you don't understand why that's significant, I'm going to talk very briefly about stocks, okay? Give me a moment. So, the way any given company operates, a controlling interest in stock usually means a majority share of the stock. Now, majority share does not mean 50.x%. It means you have the single biggest chunk of shares. And in most corporations in the world, that amount is usually in the single-digit range, sometimes in the two-digit range, like 10% of a stock giving you a controlling share of a company. I know that sounds weird, but again, remember that if you have 10% of a company and everyone else has like 0.0001% of a company, that's the first one I mentioned, Master, then they actually have controlling interest in a company. Now, I point this out because they have a controlling interest in every company I just mentioned except for Ubisoft. Now, for those of you not aware, there's this other company which I want to talk about briefly called Vivendi. Now, Vivendi is not as personally aggravating as EA, but is, I would say, more contributory towards the world being a worse place than EA is. And I want to stress that I am saying that without a hint of hyperbole or exaggeration. Vivendi is a disgusting company that has actively been functioning as if video game properties and IPs and concepts are little bits and pieces that can just be traded without any concept of value or worth or creativity or fun or interest or engagement or generally anything that might be considered positive within the universe. They are a money firm. Now, that's my own phrase. That's what I like to think of that. What I mean by that is every company needs to make money to some extent or another. This is simply reality. But a money firm is a company that has no interest in anything other than making money. It is not just their primary concern, it is their only concern. And that is Vivendi. And that has been Vivendi for a long time. If you've ever heard of Sierra Games, you've heard of Vivendi. If you've ever heard of Blizzard, you've heard of Vivendi. I'm not going to go into all the others, but they have had a significant impact on the gaming world for decades. Yeah, a money-only firm, exactly. That is exactly what Vivendi is. Now, Vivendi may have, got to put an asterisk to that, may have been trying to make a play to take over Ubisoft, take a controlling interest in Ubisoft. I know it's weird, right, Michael? And the idea is that they wanted to pull the Ubisoft label and brands under their envelope and then be able to turn those around into profit. Now, what I mean by that, companies like Vivendi aren't usually interested in the actual sales of games, as absolutely weird as that may sound. They're interested in licensing deals. They're interested in publication deals. They're interested in marketing presentations. They're interested in getting other companies to pay them money in order to be able to present it in such a way that makes them additional money. Again, money being the primary focus, not the game sales. I know that sounds contradictory, so just bear with me here. I also have a headache, so I feel like I'm explaining this terribly, so please again forgive me. I also hate Vivendi. I gotta admit that. I have to admit that. I gotta admit my bias here. The reason I hate Vivendi is because Vivendi is almost single-handedly responsible for most of Blizzard's financial woes for the better part of about 3 or 4 years, and it pissed me off, so on a personal level. Ignoring all the other garbage they do to make the world a worse place. So... getting back to my point, Vivendi may or may not have been making a move to take a controlling interest in Ubisoft. Now, if you ask me right now, my gut opinion, I'd say they were actually making the move. It's a good move. Whatever you want to say about Ubisoft games, if you've noticed the trends, Ubisoft has been doing good for the better part of about 3 years now. They have been on an uprise. You know, a lot of Ubisoft games that have come out recently, they may be aggravating, but they've been good stuff, and they have been selling well. So it would make sense to me that Vivendi, as of about 2 years ago, actually is when this really started, was making a play to try and take that over. Now, Ubisoft itself, there's a holding company that the president of Ubisoft, and I can't pronounce his name, please forgive me, it's this wonderfully French name. I can't pronounce it. I'm not going to try. The president, the leader of, the guy in charge of Ubisoft has a holding company which is run by him and his brother and several other members of his family. Now, God, I just realized I gotta explain what that means. There are groups whose only purpose is to manage money, and that can be misleading because some of those groups aren't actually, like, companies in the strictest sense. They are effectively purely financial firms. There's another one. It's based in Canada, and it has to do with a bunch of teachers' unions. It's not actually the teachers themselves, though. It's just the group that manages the pensions and retirement plans for a group of teachers. It's the company they formed to manage money and investments so they would have money to retire, if that makes any kind of sense. So there's a lot of groups like that, and a lot of individuals and their families will make companies and holding companies like that, whose only purpose is to manage investments so that they can then have money in the bag, or in the bank, I suppose is a more accurate way to put that. I know it feels like I'm swaying way off topic here, but I'm making this point to get across a couple of points, because I am going somewhere with all of this. First of all, in direct response to Vivendi's interest and buying up of shares, Ubisoft French guy, I'm sorry, I mean no disrespect, I actually have a lot of respect for the man, he's a cool guy. He and his holding company basically sold, like, liquidated tons of their own assets and dropped everything to immediately buy in a controlling interest into certain things, and then that itself was bought out as well. There's this whole crap, a circle going around. But I mentioned that to give a point of how seriously the leadership of Ubisoft took this potential hostile takeover. Like, they took this very seriously, and they wanted to deal with this immediately. And they wanted to try and get those shares in the hands of someone other than Vivendi. This is not a small thing that was done. I don't know how to properly explain this to anybody who doesn't understand the money world, but this was a big deal. And once again, increased my personal respect for this man, whose name I can't even pronounce. I also want to mention that Tencent was directly involved in this. Now, I haven't been able to find anything as far as official above-board records deals or information or anything, other than the fact that Tencent flat out said, we're not going to be interfering with Ubisoft. But what they did do was they bought a fairly significant share of Ubisoft, more or less deliberately to ensure that it doesn't land in the hands of Vivendi. Now... Now that I've gotten all that information out, let's talk about what this might mean. So first of all, Tencent, like I said, huge controlling interest. Yeah, no kidding. Who would, Eisermaster? As I said, Vivendi's kind of a monster. Like, I know we all make fun of Warner Bros., and I know we all make fun of EA. Vivendi is pretty much worse than all of those combined. Vivendi is a monster. Let's make this clear. Vivendi is a giant, unfeeling factory, like in every work of fiction ever, that's just mulching the terrain into cubes, you know? But yes, scenes. So again, like I said, there's two things I really want to talk about here. The first is my respect for Ubisoft and Guillemot. God, I'm just trying. I give up. Guillemot. That is correct, Hazardous. That's not really a option, as weird as that may sound. There are ways to prevent sales, but not large term, not in the scope and scale we're talking. We're talking millions upon millions of stocks, you got to keep in mind, just for a few percentage points. Yeah, you know, that's a good way to put that, Gillade. Ubisoft is irritating, right? You remember when I tried to play Assassin's Creed Origins to show off the awesome history, you know, the Discovery Tour mode? That was irritating. Vivendi is legitimately evil. Yes, only if they're a public company. It's one of the reasons why there are a lot of good reasons and bad reasons. I don't do French, dude. In order to go public with a company. If I ever actually... Yes, I did actually manage to fix it. If I ever manage to make, you know, the Lore Runner company or whatever, it's not going public. I know the risks of not going public, but I'm not going public. There's so much that can go wrong with going public that would never be on the table for me. And then I would die, and then whoever took over would go public with it. I guarantee you that's exactly what would happen, because that's what always happens. I'm getting off topic. Let's talk about Tencent. So as I mentioned, Tencent has a huge controlling share of the mobile... not mobile, that's the wrong phrase. The battle arena market right now. They have a significant amount of influence over a huge amount of multiplayer-centric games. They have tremendous sway. They are effectively the company in China as far as gaming goes, and the fact that they have such influence in other countries itself speaks to how much significance. So it's not just MOBA. They have more than just MOBA. Oh, thanks, Gary. Thanks. That's wonderful. I'd like to commission an assassination on my best friend. Can we have that happen real quick? What this means for Ubisoft is debatable. This could be a simple move to have a significant interest in a company that is currently making money. Let me make this clear. Any company investing in... Yes, that's true. They also have Call of Duty Online in China. I forgot about that. Forgive me. They actually have a lot more holdings than I'm currently mentioning. Let me make that clear. I'm just mentioning some of the more big, widely known ones. Any company right now investing in Ubisoft, this would be a good time to do it. It's actually about a year ago would have been a good time to do it, to be more accurate. But, you know, there's still a good purpose in investing in that. Oh, it's Gimon instead of Guimon? God damn it. See, like I said, I can't do French, I can't do Norse, I can't do German. You go more Eastern European, I'm a little more comfortable with it. Get into Japanese, as long as it's in English, English letters. I can do Japanese, but get over into that central Western European region, my brain explodes. I don't know if Tencent has any interest in influencing Ubisoft. That's probably my biggest concern here. They have the financial power to do so right now. Let's make that clear. Tencent has the ability right now to go to Ubisoft and say, I want you to do this, and Ubisoft will probably have to do that. They can influence the board of directors. That's the level of power Tencent has right now over Ubisoft. Whether that's a good or a bad thing is kind of debatable. I think we'll find out probably about a year from now the real impact of this changeover, because whatever changes or influences they might be having will not be felt for about a year. So on the plus side, we probably have about another year of yay, of Ubisoft doing some good stuff. I mean, Mario XCOM, that was really good. I really liked that. I really liked Assassin's Creed Origins. Far Cry 5 looks like it's actually going to be enjoyable. Me and Pax are still kind of on the fence of picking that up, but, you know. That's not how that works, Glade. But let's keep politics out of this. What I am most interested to know is basically, let me bear this down to a singular point. Obviously, Ubisoft and Guillemot, I think that's my 5th attempt at pronouncing that, have a legitimate interest in trying to put out good stuff. Good games, good production, and props to them on that. For all the irritations Ubisoft does, and for all the times they frickin' screw up, god damn it, at least there's people there who still try to put out some good games, and that's awesome. And the second point I want to make is that I don't know if Tencent is another Vivendi. Just to summarize that as bluntly as I can. I don't know if they are a company that has a legitimate interest in trying to push out actual quality products, or if they're a money factory. And I don't know. I do not have information sufficient to state on that. So, I don't know. By the way, I know, I want to mention something else. Let's go ahead and cut off this topic here really quick, because it's kind of related. So, really quick, I wanted to mention something. This will be going in the FAQ as well. So this is going to be like an in-between thing before we get to our next topic. But anybody who's interested in a premiere run, all you have to do is suggest it. That's all you have to do. You just have to say, hey, it would be awesome if you did a premiere run on such and such, and I will add it to the potential list. And once it's on the potential list, it will have to be funded, obviously, but there you go. Well, probably Isermaster. Although I don't know a lot of specific details about Chinese gaming. I don't. I'm just going to admit my ignorance on that one. So I can only speak from vagueness and hearsay and more financial moves. The next thing, oh yeah. There we go. What is a way out? Hang on, let me Google this really quick. A way out. So, I'm going to talk about that really quick. A Way Out looks like a wonderfully designed game. Like, I remember watching this and commenting. If you remember, I talked about this during the E3 when it was announced. And I commented on how it does look like a genuinely well-designed game. I'm not sure I could play it personally. But it is a game I would at least consider. So, again, if you want to put that in a premiere run, just say, hey, didn't I play Subnautica? Or did that just come out? I don't do explorations anymore. No, it looks like I did not play Subnautica. So yeah, sure, I'll add Subnautica to the list. Why not? Subnautica. Bam. Added. It'll have to be funded. I'll do more research later. A premiere run. Okay. Cyberpunk 2077. Is it co-op only? Because if it's co-op only, then we have an issue. Like a huge, gargantuan issue that basically can't be solved. So that would probably automatically nix that as a possibility. Yeah, Shawshank Redemption. I do not like Shawshank Redemption for perspective. Okay, let's get to my next actual topic here. So where's my... Let's talk about franchises being dead. If it is co-op only, I'm going to go ahead and move that onto the forbidden list because there's just too many issues with doing a scheduled stream that requires another person. There's just so many issues with that. What is the... Oh, you mean the Switch one, Gallade? We don't even have a title yet, but I'll go ahead and jot it down. Switch Fire Emblem. There we go. Mass Effect what? Where's the... There it is. Advanced Wars what? That's already actually happening. was me. I like your name. But thank you for mentioning it. Legacy of Kain what? I mean, I'm actually on the dead playlist right now. Hello, Mugen. Gary, I want you to think for 3 seconds about why I don't like Shawshank Redemption. There you go. Hello, Mugen. Did I already say hi? Yes, but timing and scheduling is the real problem, Isermaster, not having... I could easily buy 2 copies of the game. That's not really a problem. So, let's talk about franchises being dead. Now, Ace Combat 7? Sure. Ace Combat 7. How recent should a premiere run be? A premiere run has to be something I have never reviewed or gone in depth into. That's the only requirement. It could be a SNES game, and it would still qualify. That's the requirement of a premiere run. It also has to follow the other requirements for a premiere run. Can only be a certain length, has to be something that's good for streaming, has to be something that, is funded. I think that's about it. Let's talk about dead franchises. Okay, so a few weeks ago, I made a comment that people who say that, oh my God, Star Wars is dead, Star Trek is dead, World of Warcraft is dead. I commented on how those people are idiots. I want to clarify that sentence. Hang on. Yono and the Celestial. That's actually not true, Hazardous. There's like 5 I haven't played. Mostly games that didn't come out in the States. Oh my God, hang on. I'll get to this topic in a second, I swear. So, Automation, the car company, tycoon game. That's a long title, but okay. Turn-based games are dead. I want to clarify my statement because a few people took umbrage to what I said with reason. I wasn't clarifying my statement, and I also want to mention it because people suggested I talk about it today. So let me be clear what I mean by a franchise being dead. When I'm saying that phrase, what I mean is after Star Trek the animated series concluded, which is not that long after Star Trek the original series concluded, before the release of Star Trek the Next Generation, or Star Trek Motion Picture, excuse me, Star Trek was dead. It was actually dead. It was a dead franchise. It wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't really doing anything. Then Star Trek happened for a while, and then Star Trek Nemesis came out. And then Star Trek was dead, again, for several years, until Star Trek 2009 came out, at which point Star Trek was brought back. And now we've got some good, well, now we've got Star Trek kind of going again. Now, this can be argued based on niggling details or whatnot, but my point being that a franchise that is dead is actually pretty easy to define. It's a franchise that isn't going anywhere. Yeah, Doctor Who also died for a while. Yes, I know the radio dramas continued, and they had those little one-act leaflet things. I forget what they called those that were coming out. If you can think of the name, Mandartin, let me know. Yeah, Golden Sun, that's a dead franchise. Advanced Wars, dead franchise. F-Zero, dead franchise. Arguably, the Mana series is a dead franchise. I know we just had that Secret of Mana port. Good port, but still a port. But Mana as itself is basically a dead franchise. Mega Man has been a dead franchise for a while. Everspace? I'll jot that one down. I'm going to look into all these. I'm not guaranteeing any of these are going to be added to the list because I want to do my research first. But I'll jot down suggestions. Command & Conquer, dead franchise. Now, that's all obvious and super obvious, but what some people were saying, Mega Man 11's coming out this December, I believe, is when someone, I made the comment that if someone says World of Warcraft is dead, they're an idiot, because they are. And I stand by that statement, but that's by the definitions I just used, right? Because World of Warcraft is not dead at all. It is still going strong. The BFA Alpha is proceeding at a high pace. Legion has been fantastic and well-selling. So both creatively and financially successful. So obviously that's just a stupid statement, right? However, this is where we get into the gray area. Because if someone says World of Warcraft is dead to me, well, that makes perfect sense. Now, I almost feel stupid for stating this outright because this is such an obvious statement. But, if you say WoW is dead to me, okay, I'm with that. That makes sense because that means something completely different. That doesn't mean a franchise has ceased, has died. It means that to you, whatever it is that made that franchise interesting or engaging or enjoyable for you has ceased to be. Hence, the variance in opinion, the variance in perspective here. Excuse me. And I suppose if we were to get into details, as Lurker has been pointing out, whether or not something is dead or something has concluded, there is a difference between those two things. As much as we just mentioned Farscape is dead, it's worth noting that Farscape, in my opinion at least, with the Peacekeeper Wars, had a fairly satisfying conclusion. And then the franchise, ceased. Which is funny because Farscape kept going in the comics, but you get the point. Anyways, so yeah, I mean, there's plenty of people who state something that such and such is dead, but what they really mean is it's dead to them. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. This is more about the communication aspects of this, because I get that. I've seen a decent amount, but they're stupid, Hazardous. Anybody who says WoW is dead and means WoW is dead and not WoW is dead to them is an idiot. And I'm going to say that as bluntly as I can. I'm not here to kowtow to every moron that has an accurately and definedly, provably wrong opinion. It's like, Hazardous, it's like you just walked up to me and said, Lore, you should be careful about those flat earthers because, you might be upsetting them. I don't care if I'm upsetting them. They're stupid. Now, that's not true, Hazardous. That is incredibly not true. The amount of times I've seen someone say that WoW is dead, I'm going to keep using WoW because it's the most commonly heard expense, who say WoW is dead because, oh my god, they're losing subscriptions left and right, and nobody's actually playing the game anymore. I never see anyone in Dollar anymore. WoW is dead. No, I hear that all the time. I hear that more commonly than I hear the WoW is dead to me type of phrase. Now, I have heard some people say, WoW is dead to me. They have not always said it that way, but it's usually pretty clear how they're defining it. It's like, oh my god, all of the leveling is nowhere near as fun as it used to be. I hate the way the dungeons work. WoW is dead. That's a fairly clear WoW is dead to me, as opposed to nobody plays WoW anymore, right? I could also add WoW is dying to this list because that's something that's been said for about 10 years. Solid. No, those people are idiots, and I am not going to apologize for calling them what they are. Sorry, guys. I like to be nice and tolerant and understanding, but limits. Is Tor dead? I don't know. I don't think so. No, I think they are still producing content for Tor. I'm pretty sure. There was a patch for Guild Wars 1 recently. Can you believe that? Seriously. Anyways, I know, right, Mugen? No, I'm pretty sure Tor is still producing. I'm almost positive. I haven't admittedly looked into this for like a few months at this point. So, I'm pretty sure Tor is not dead by either aspect of the statement. Either player supported or developer supported, because like I said, I'm still pretty sure they're producing stuff. Like, you could argue that Guild Wars 1, the example I just used, is dead because they're not producing any new content for it. Yet, at the same time, people still play Guild Wars 1. I still have Guild Wars 1 installed. I hope someday to do a Guild Wars 1 lore run. So, yes, there's an expansion from ESO that is coming out later this month, or later this year, which is set in the Somerset Isles. Anyways, I'm getting way off topic. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm getting way off topic here. Point being, the whole point of this, because someone, again, suggested that I talk about this, is to be more communicative. Now, I am just as much to blame here as anybody else is, but the idea needs to be stated. There is a distinction, a significant and massive gap of a distinction between such and such, a franchise, a company, an idea is dead, or it being dead to me. There's a huge gap in between those two concepts, and I want to make that more clear. So, for example, Hazardous just asked, is BioWare dead? I cannot in any good conscience say BioWare is dead, because they're not. The company still exists, and the company, even though it doesn't have most of the people who originally started it or worked with there, the company is still going. The company is still producing content. However, I would say without hesitation that BioWare is dead to me, yes. I have no hesitation in saying that whatsoever. Inquisition, I liked Inquisition, despite its massive flaws. I will never play that game again without cheating because of some of its significant flaws. Cheating mostly through modding, I should clarify. Andromeda was a massive disappointment, mostly just a very neutral, blah, aggressively average game. And I don't even know what I think of Anthem. I wanted to say Union for a second. Anthem. I don't even know what to think of that. So yeah, no, that's a great comparison, Hazardous. BioWare, as much as I'd like to say otherwise, is merely dead to me. Whatever love I used to have for BioWare. BioWare used to be an absolute, definite proof of, they had a lot of consumer trust in me. That's gone. All that consumer trust is gone. So I would easily say that they're dead to me. To my knowledge, yes, Kid Viper. As far as them, they haven't re-peaked. No, they came close a couple times, but they haven't actually got after. I know, right, Mugen? Inquisitor. Sorry. So again, all about communication, because I get the idea of something being dead to you, right? I'm sure a lot of you can name a franchise or an IP or I don't want to start anything here, but how many of you think Star Trek is dead to you? No shame in it. No judgment. I personally know 3 people off the top of my head who have said that Star Trek is dead to them because of what Star Trek Discovery has been doing. I'm not going to spoil because episodes are still coming out, blah blah blah. But right, because some people just don't care for Discovery. Now, I actually know one of those people who there's kind of an asterisk to that because Star Trek Online is still going and still going strong. And by the way, can I get some hype for Victory is Life coming out in a few months? There are episodes of Star Trek coming out. They're starting Season 2 with the Section 31 story arc. That's not a spoiler. That was released openly. But they're doing a Section 31 story arc in Season 2, in Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. They're going. They're continuing to do it. They have managed to sign on a second season. That's more impressive than it sounds. I mean, I know it's Star Trek, so we don't really get that, but you'd be amazed how many shows don't make it out of their first season. And an overwhelming number of shows don't make it out of their second, so we'll see what Discovery does after that. Excuse me. I think I agree with that, Dream Whisperer. I would freely admit that I have seen bits and pieces of Discovery, and I'm not going to go into full details there, but so far, it's a decently executed show that I just don't care for. You know what I mean? I'm not quite willing to call it coffee, because the implication of coffee is that something is demonstrably good, rather than, you know, what Discovery is, which is very, very debatable. I will say one thing that's really, really been bugging, if I could just rant for just a second, one thing that's really been bugging the crap out of me about Star Trek Discovery is the directing. They use so many Dutch angles. They use so many shaky cams. They use so many weird people carrying a 10mm shots. It's bothering me. It's actively been bothering me. Like every tiny little tidbit of Discovery I see, it's like, oh my god. It's especially jarring considering I come from, you know, I watch TNG and DS9 basically weekly right now, right, for the Monday and Tuesday ruminations, to go from such a wildly different directorial style to, and it's always at an angle. There's always this angle. God, it drives me nuts. Sorry, rant off. Yeah, you know, you want to know something? We've been talking about things that are dead, right? Here's something. Kid Viper gives a great example of something that is truly dead. There's like a step below dead, and that's truly dead. And that's Asheron's Call, because it's gone. It's nuked. You don't want to know a game that's truly dead? Earth and Beyond. Yeah. Anyways. Back to franchises. All right, sorry. We segued wildly off topic there. But I do want to talk about fatigue. That's the next topic. So let me go ahead and get a timestamp here really quick. Yeah, I gotta be excited. Wah! There are ways to put energy into a scene that do not... You don't have to get... Thank you, Spirit of Memory. You don't have to kiss my butt. I don't need that. I want legitimate feedback. Real feedback. Although, as I've said before, even if you say this sucks because such and such, that is actually positive feedback. I've used that whole concept before. Yeah, good example, Lurker. So that's a nice big vague thing for a good reason there. So let's talk about fatigue. Now, I myself have actually talked about fatigue more than once. I've talked about fatigue regarding the Assassin's Creed series and how that doesn't really affect me. I'm sorry, Algrad. Exactly, absurdity. That's my own personal mentality on that one. The I don't get tired of the Assassin's Creed series. I don't get tired of, superhero movies. Fatigue doesn't affect me personally unless it gets into truly insane levels. Let's go ahead and switch playlists. We don't need this playlist anymore. What's a good playlist? What music goes with everything? I have heard a lot of people talk about how they have superhero fatigue. Like it's just, oh goody, there's another superhero movie coming out this year. Whoop-de-crap. And I don't really... Okay, so first of all, let's go ahead and take a step back and admit that there's nothing wrong with saying, I have fatigue about this. Yeah, exactly, Kid Viper. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, I am fatigued with superhero films. There's nothing wrong with saying, I am fatigued about Assassin's Creed games. There's nothing wrong about saying, I'm fatigued about Pokemon games, right? I've heard those comments about a whole bunch of recurring franchises many times over the last several years. But I also have to admit that I think that people who go a couple of steps too far past that and state that because of such and such fatigue, such and such is an automatic failure, are going just a little bit too far with that one. For example, I have actually heard people, and this is part of why this topic was suggested for discussion, I have heard people flat out say that superhero movies are on their way out because there's just too much superhero fatigue. That superhero movies are just not as fun or as popular as they used to be, and therefore they're just getting worse and worse and worse. But the numbers and the actual production of the films don't seem to fill that out. And I do have a topic here, I swear. I'm just kind of circling around it for a second. I want to make sure it's all in one place before I really talk about this. Because fatigue is something that every proper creative designer wants to avoid as much as possible. COD fatigue, it's another good one. Call of Duty fatigue. If you legitimately care about putting out a significant work of art, right? If you want to put out a good creative work, hi Corwin, then the fish. Then you are interested in trying to avoid fatigue. And I've noticed that Marvel has actually been going very far out of their way to avoid that fatigue issue from the creative side. Have you noticed that? Because any given Marvel movie that comes out, even though there is the Marvel formula, the Iron Man formula, the actual creative process and construction that goes into Marvel movies almost ensures that it's almost always new people involved. Now, if you don't understand what I mean, let me put it to you this way. Pretend that you, whoever you are right now, you just made Iron Man, and it's amazing, and everyone loves it. Yeah, okay, bam! So you've made Iron Man. Okay, now we want you to make 6 more films. You, specifically. And you already see the problem with that, right? But this is not what Marvel did. They made a couple of mistakes with this around their Phase 2 era. But for the most part, Marvel has been avoiding this particular problem by saying, I want you to make Iron Man. And now we've got this IP which is big and hot and popular. And now there's tons of people who would love to get involved in that, right? Tons of talented people who have creative vision and who have the desire and drive to push themselves to put out the best possible product they can. And so Iron Man 1 and 2 were both done by the same general team. Iron Man 3, new team. Avengers, new team. Captain America, different team. Thor 1, 2, and 3, each done by a different team. You get where I'm going with this. Marvel has been going out of their way to try and, from a large-scale, zoomed-out perspective, avoid this problem. To avoid having that kind of fatigue issue by continuously cycling in new people in order to go ahead and ensure that there is still some creative spark to the MCU. This is, in my opinion, one of the 2 biggest contributing factors as to why the MCU not only succeeded, but has been succeeding ever since. And as has been pointed out by several people in chat, all of the metrics of viewing figures and sales figures of tickets and sales figures of related merchandise and presentation, creative ratings, Metacritic ratings, the number of people who go to the conventions, whatever metric you can use shows pretty much the exact opposite of fatigue. Oh, I'm getting to that, Micromono, because that's the other side of this equation. So Marvel is doing everything that they can basically do to try and avoid a fatigue problem with the MCU. Now, as Mike Romano pointed out, and this is the second point I was building up to, we're the same. We're seeing another superhero movie. Now, the new superhero movie may or may not fatigue us. Again, that's always going to come down to personal opinion. I can't decide or state or choose or anything. We can't affect that, basically. There's nothing within our power to affect the fatigue problem. Not as viewers, not as consumers of this. Now, there are some people like myself, I'll go ahead and admit that, who just don't get fatigued by things unless it goes to a ridiculous extreme. Like, I like to say, if you make me eat 3 Reese's every hour, I will get sick of Reese's, even though I love Reese's. But that you have to hit an extreme for that. If I have 1 Reese's a day, I will not get sick of that, right? There are enough people like me who will continue to consume these things as long as they continue to be good. That's always the proviso there, right? That is always the requirement. Oh, I'm getting to that too, Henson. So we've got at least one group of people who's going to keep watching these things despite fatigue problem. That's my group. Then we've got the people who will bow out for a bit and then come back. I know a few people who belong in this. I actually belonged in this group myself a few years ago for an unrelated thing. I'm not going to bore you with that right now. So some people will watch, let me use a completely hypothetical example. They'll be Iron Man 1, yeah, Thor, yeah, and then they'll see Avengers, yeah. And then they'll bow out. They'll say, all right, that was awesome. I'm kind of fatigued. A few years pass, and then I don't know, let's say Thor 3 last year, right? They're like, I want to come back to superhero movies. And then they come back to it. So this is a second group that this strategy is hitting. I do think their release schedule was a little bit weird this year. Yes, Hazardous, I agree with that. I'm not sure where they were thinking with that one, but whatever, I suppose. I really don't have any information on why they designed the release schedule like that. Reese's is chocolate-coated peanut butter. It is a brand for, there's Reese's Bits and there's Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. It's R-E-E-S-E-S if you want to look it up. Now then there's people who will just get fatigued and get more and more fatigued the more they hear about it. Now, that group 3, there's nothing you can do about that group 3. The only thing you do about that group 3 is stop making superhero movies. The point I'm trying to make is, I think, at least as of right now, I can say pretty definitively that what Marvel, and to a lesser extent Disney, is doing is the correct choice to make here. Try to keep cycling out the creative minds. Try to keep the creative people involved as different as they can. They've been cycling out actors as well. Oh yeah, I suppose I say there's also, because of how long these movies have been going on, there's people who are watching these films who haven't seen the older films because they weren't old enough, or they weren't young enough, or they didn't have time, you know. How many people are in college who don't really have time? I actually know one person personally who was going through college in the last 10 years and then succeeded at college and then had the time to go see this stuff, right? Anyways, I'm getting off topic. Point being, they really, from an overall perspective, both creatively and financially, when you're looking at something like Marvel is looking at with the MCU, you really only have 2 choices. Do what they're doing, or screw it up. Now, what I mean by screw it up, let's discuss that really quick, because they can say, all right, we're just going to stop producing films for a bit. I want to remind you that their films are still selling, and still selling well. So that would be a huge financial drawback to the company as a whole, which may or may not be a good thing. You also run the risk of losing public saturation of IP. In other words, people tend to forget about your IP if you go for a nice big period of time without producing a new one for it. This is a fairly common problem, at least when going to a large-scale presentation like this, or a large-scale franchise like this. Group 4, don't go to the movies, is still part of Group 1, 2, or 3. Because it's not about whether you go to the theaters and see these films. This is about whether or not you pay money to procure a film. Whether you put money into the IP, in other words. So they can be like, nope, we're leaving alone. Which is effectively grinding the momentum of their marketing campaign to a halt, in addition to also ensuring that they're literally going to be losing money in doing that. Or they could do what other companies have done, and I'm not going to name any names, and say, I want you to make the next 5 movies. And so the movies kind of get stale. And kind of go, right? Yeah, exactly, Kid Viper. You get my general presentation here? My point is, they could screw this up. They could cease this. They could try to spread things out. But I honestly, I know this sounds really horrible, but I honestly can't imagine a way in which ceasing to produce a currently popular thing without going overboard, that is very important, is a bad, it would be an acceptable choice to make. However, I also in no way begrudge anyone who belongs in category 3 of the people I mentioned earlier. People who just get tired of things after a while. And that leads us to the weird paradox we've got here. Because I imagine some of you, in fact, I'd love to hear from you, Mugen, on this specifically, because you mentioned you're in group 3. I have this weird feeling that because of the sheer level of market saturation that the MCU has, that people who would get tired of stuff after a while have never gotten to the point of basically shifting over into group 2. Where like, okay, I've taken a break, now I'm going to come back, because they effectively never took a break, if you follow me. Because the films are still everywhere. I'm still talking about it right now. There's still adverts going around. There's still, people are still discussing it in shows and news clips. There's a huge amount of saturation to Infinity War right now, right? Black Panther is still making headlines as recently as yesterday. That's the weird paradox, because I can't think that there's any way to solve the problem of people being too bombarded with information while not simultaneously pulling away from the problem of ensuring that the rest of the people don't forget about your IP, or that the momentum of your marketing campaign lessens, or any of the other problems I just mentioned. Hence why I call this a paradox. Because it's actually not quite a paradox. It's kind of a catch-22 is a better way to put that. There's no win-win here. We have to decide, of the huge aggregate of the wildly variety of different people, you have to choose which general group you're going to be aiming for. And it's very clear that Disney and Marvel are both aiming for group 1 and group 2, and basically saying whatever to group 3 at this point. Excuse me. Now that feels like a slightly different thing, Mugen. That feels like what's a good big parallel? I should probably make a Loreweek for that. There's a psychological term for that. It's when you overhyped is different. Hype is related, but it is a separate category of things. Hype is all about trying to be like, Infinity War, oh my god, it's coming, and you gotta be excited about it. And here's 50 trailers, and here's 7,000 things pushing it to it, and here's bus ads, because it's always bus ads, right? No, that hype is about trying to artificially generate an excess amount of interest in something with the specific purposes of overselling it, knowing that it's a failed product, or at least a not as good as you think it is product. Hype is quite literally the art of trying to make a McDonald's burger look good. Just to put that as bluntly as I can. Now, I'm not saying McDonald's burgers are necessarily bad. I have had good McDonald's burgers in my life. Once, twice, yeah. But hype is about specifically looking at that McDonald's burger and trying to sell it as if it's a Five Guys burger or a Fuddruckers burger or whatever. So you go in expecting a Fuddruckers burger and you get a McDonald's burger. Whether or not you would have liked that burger is no longer relevant, because now it's just nowhere near what you were expecting. That's hype. Anyways. But yeah, Pointer Sisters. What Mugen mentioned earlier is kind of a similarly related concept. And maybe we can even call this like group 5 of people here at this point, because there's a psychological concept where I don't like... Oh, what's a good example? I'm trying to think of a good example. No, false advertising, well, I suppose hype does qualify as false advertising, but false advertising is an umbrella term. There's a lot of things that fall under false advertising. False advertising usually is stated in the more specific to refer to something that is an outright lie. False advertising in this context, Tigzar, would be, oh my God, you're getting this huge Fuddruckers burger, and then you go to McDonald's and you get a salad. That's false advertising. What the hell was I thinking about? Right. Group 5. I was trying to think of a specific. I guess I got nothing. Let's say there's blah, okay? And blah is something you have no interest in. Like, maybe you've tried it a little bit. Maybe you've gone into it a little bit. But it's not really your thing. Now, like, if we were to make a scale here of, like, the positive 10 to negative 10, you're probably, like, around here. Like, maybe -1. Don't really care all that much, right? But then your friends talk about, oh my God, Bob is so amazing. It's the most incredible such and such I've ever had. And oh my God, it's incredible. And then you go to work and people at work are talking about it, and there's like a news show you watch where someone's talking about how incredible it is, and you're just like, and it starts to grate on you, doesn't it? This is how a -1 goes down to a -6. This is how opinions can be shifted. This is related to pendulum effect, but not a direct parallel. It's kind of a sub-tech, something of a sub-thing, a sub-idea of pendulum effect. Because we still don't have a release date to quote, which is really irritating. And I know because I checked this morning. So I'm guessing that's kind of what's going on with Mugen. I have no interest in this. Guys, I have no interest in this. Guys, please shut up about it. I have no interest in this. And it just gets worse and worse and worse, right? I imagine almost everyone in chat right now knows what I'm talking about and has been through it at least once in your life. I know I have plenty of times. I didn't want to call anything out because I realized a lot of that's going to be on the show. Stuff I've had to cover for the show. It's like, oh my God, I'm tired of it. Please, stop talking about it. Right? You know what I'm talking about. For a while there, I'll go ahead and say one thing. For a while there, it was Game of Thrones for me, the show. Oh my God, Lore. They didn't call me Lore, of course, because it was, friends and whatnot. But oh my God, Lore, you've got to watch Game of Thrones. You've got to watch Game of Thrones. Oh my God, this is the best thing ever. Oh my God, I can't believe what happened last night in Game of Thrones. Oh my God, Game of Thrones, Game of Thrones, Game of Thrones. And I'm just like, I've actually seen several episodes of Game of Thrones. It's just not my thing. I've said this before. I don't like it. It is not for me. But it goes from it's not for me into, guys, please, you know what I'm talking about. What about the book? I've actually read, I forget which book now. I read one of the books. It's been a long time. You're right. I'm going to go watch Game of Thrones right now, guys. For a while there, it was Witcher 1. You remember that? Some of my older viewers will remember that. For a while there, I was just really not into the Witcher series and really not into Witcher. I'm still not actually into the Witcher series. I love Witcher 3 because Witcher 3 is a fantastically, amazingly crafted game. But people would not shut up about Witcher 1, and I got comments literally weekly saying, back when I was a small, tiny little channel, not even making money doing this, saying, hey, when are you going to cover Witcher 1? When are you going to cover Witcher 1? Guys, I made it a rule to try and cope with it. Anytime someone mentioned it, it was pushed back another month. And it took over a year to finally cover Witcher 1. Witcher 2 was interesting. Very depressing. I will never play it again. But Witcher 2 was actually very interesting. I will absolutely agree with that. Witcher 1 did have some interesting points. I just have no plans to ever play that again either. Altered Carbon. I got one for you. The Expanse. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who don't know that The Expanse was a series of books. I have one of those books upstairs right now. I know. Witcher 3 was so much of heads and shoulders above Witcher 2. It's really astonishing. Anyways, So I guess that's actually all I have to talk about. Like I said, I didn't have any news this week. Tencent, Facebook is still evil. Shocker. Water's still wet. Damn it, Gary. I've read The Expanse, Anthony. Well, I've read some of it. Will I ever be covering the lore in Call of Duty? No, there's no lore in Call of Duty. So I'm going to go ahead and chop off the local... Oh my god, birds can fly? Even penguins? Oh my god. I was on Facebook briefly. I'm going to chop off the local recording. So for those of you watching on YouTube,